Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. I'm Joe, and I am so happy you're here. This is the place where book lovers, authors, and industry insiders come together to talk about the stories we love and the impact they have. Before we dive in, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the Libby app YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. If you love what we're doing, leave a review or drop a comment. It helps more book lovers find us. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, you can send me an email at bookloungebylibby@overdrive.com. So, welcome to all of you today. This is episode 9 of season 1 of Book Lounge by Libby, where we will be talking all about romantasy, the subgenre that has taken over so many book spaces over the last few years. If you are new here, welcome. I hope you would consider checking out other episodes from this season after you get through today's. I really hope you enjoy it. It was such an exciting conversation. And for our existing following along listeners, welcome. I hope you are ready to hear more about the world of romantasy. For those of you who may not be familiar, romantasy is a subgenre of either the romance or fantasy genres, and the meaning itself is under much debate. Some folks say it's where romantic and fantasy aspects of the story are equally important, or where it's a romance story with a fantasy backdrop, or the plot would fall apart of that fantasy without the romance element. A lot of people say there's a lot of spice in romantasy, but it depends on where you look. But honestly, no matter how you look at this giant, it is absolutely a force in the book community right now. And it's been around for quite a bit. There's no denying it, but now it's under everyone's noses. We can hear it, we can see it coming from a mile away. There is a lot of romantasy out there. MK Lobb says in her Writer's Digest article, "What is romantasy anyway?" linked in the show notes. Quote, "My best answer, but certainly not the only answer, is this. Romantasy blends romance and fantasy in a way that incorporates what are widely agreed to be the romance plot beats. It often requires that your protagonist's characterization hinge upon their relationship with the love interest. And these days, sadly, romantasy has also become a sort of manufactured marketing tactic, a catch-all way to say, this fantasy novel has central romance and you should read it." End quote there. So you can check out that full article, What is Romantasy Anyway, linked in the show notes. But with that, joining me today to talk about romantasy in this first segment are three amazing authors in the space. First up, we have Jennifer L. Armentrout, the #1 New York Times and #1 international best-selling author. Jennifer L. Armentrout lives in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. All the rumors you've heard about her state aren't true. When she's not hard at work writing, she spends her time reading, watching really bad zombie movies, pretending to write, hanging out with her husband, her border jack Apollo, border collie Artemis, 6 judgmental alpacas, 2 rude goats, and 5 fluffy sheep. In early 2015, Jennifer was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, a group of rare genetic disorders that eventually result in the loss of vision, among other complications. Due to this diagnosis, educating people on the varying degrees of blindness has become a passion of hers, right alongside writing, which she plans to do as long as she can. Her dreams of becoming an author started in algebra class, where she spent most of her time writing short stories, which explains her dismal grades in math. Jennifer writes young adult paranormal, science fiction, fantasy, and contemporary romance. She is published with Tor, HarperCollins Avon, and William Morrow, Entangled Teen and Brazen, Disney Hyperion, Harlequin Teen, Blue Box Press. Her Wicked series has been adapted into a feature film by Passionflix. And Jennifer has won numerous awards, including the 2013 Reviewer's Choice Award for Wait for You, the 2015 Editor's Book Pick for Fall with Me. Adult romantic suspense novel Don't Look Back was a 2014 nominated Best in Young Adult Fiction by YA LSA. Her adult romantic suspense novel Till Death was an Amazon Editor's Pick and iBook Book of the Month. Her adult contemporary The Problem with Forever is a 2017 Rita Award winner in young adult fiction. Her novel Storm and Fury was chosen for the 2020-21 Florida Teen Reads list. Her adult fantasy From Blood and Ash was the 2020 Goodreads Choice Award in romance. She has also written adult and new adult contemporary and paranormal romance under the name J. Lynn. She is the owner of a Polycon and the Origin event, the successful annual events that feature over 100 best-selling authors in young adult, new adult, and adult fiction, as well as panels, parties, and so much more. You can find her on Instagram at Jennifer_L_Armentrout. Next, we have Katee Robert. Katee is a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of spicy romance. Entertainment Weekly calls their writing unspeakably hot. Their books have sold over 2 million copies, and they live in the Pacific Northwest with their husband, children, a cat who thinks he's a dog, and two Great Danes who think they're lapdogs. You can find them on Instagram at Katee_Robert. And then rounding out our group in segment one, we have Olivia Rose Darling. Olivia Rose Darling is the USA Today bestselling author of Fear the Flames. Olivia developed a passion for writing from a very young age, always scribbling poems onto napkins and short stories into her school notebooks. She graduated from Pace University and attained a degree in English with a concentration in creative writing. The second book in her series, Wrath of Dragons, published July 29th. She's on Instagram at It's Liv Darling. With that, let's turn the page and dive in. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Jennifer, Olivia, Katee, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited.
So excited to have you all here today and talk about Romantasy. I feel like I am beyond lucky for this group of folks to be together right now, truly powerhouses in the space. And I think to just like dive right in, I want to start with the appeal of the subgenre. I mean, I feel like we're also at the point where Romantasy is practically a genre on its own. It's hit that, or like we're right on the cusp of it. But what do you think makes Romantasy so addictive? I know, jump in. Anyone can jump in. I know the
Okay.
pain of a group on Zoom.
I never wanted to, jump in and then cut anybody off, but I guess I could start. I
Yeah.
feel like, for me at least, when I was growing up and I would read a lot of, the YA books, I would just really get so invested in the characters and the romance, and I feel like Romantasy gives you a bit more freedom to explore that as well as, a really intricate plot, so I feel like you get the best of both worlds, at least, that's completely my reading taste. I just love, a really well thought out plot with characters that are super fleshed out that you can just root for and root for them through the plot and how the plot affects their relationship and all of that.
I think Romantasy is really it's one of those things that gets criticized for this, but I think it's actually a perk, not a bug, is that it's very accessible. And so the world building is still thought out and still really cool, but it's not 40 pages of the cuisine or the architecture or whatever, which is cool. It's just I have ADHD and I can't always sit through that if I don't have a character to root for. And so it tends to be very character forward in a way that a lot of fantasy is, but not all fantasy is. And I find it interesting as a genre as a whole because it's very reader driven, the definition of it, we're still grappling with it, but it is a reader driven subgenre that romantic fantasy has existed, fantasy romance has existed, but romantasy is kind of something a little bit different. And I just it's really cool to see a subgenre take its legs and run because readers are so passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what they say. I think it's because, while, fantasy romance has always been, romance with fantasy subgenre, but I don't think we've seen these many books in that subgenre as we do now. Because back in the day, fantasy was heavily dominated by, very male-centric characters, and, you would definitely romance was not a thing in a way, if they weren't love stories, and if they were, they usually were going to die, or sex was weaponized, usually against the lady characters, and I think readers really wanted to see these massive worlds coming alive, but be able to see themselves in these characters and root for, you know, a happy ending or happy ever after. And I think that for the longest time, that wasn't something you typically saw, in fantasy. I'm pretty sure it's it was the opposite of that. you
And
know.
if the
Absolutely.
and the authors who were writing romantic fantasy or fantasy romance, a lot of them who are still around kind of have a chip in their shoulder a little bit because they came up in an industry that was like, "Ooh, sex, ooh, emotions, ooh,
They
what do
were
you mean?"
shoved in young adult. They would not shoved in adult. They would be shoved in young adult and then catch a lot of flack because the books would not be technically age appropriate. And it's because they just would not be marketed or shelved with the adult fantasy book.
there's definitely something to all of that. The idea of accessibility and reader-driven content, or the audience has found its home and is then like, "Please create more. We want more." Whether it's trad pub, indie pub, self pub, like, it's all out there, and everyone is clamoring for it in every degree. But then also, right, to look at the past, Jennifer, I think that's such a brilliant point of, like, either they got pushed to YA and then, right, immediately caught criticism and either kept trying to fight through it or folded because the idea of fantasy had to be, I feel so old when I say this, but like highfalutin almost. It had to be such a level of 40 pages of world building just on the meal that they had, to your point, Katie. Like there's so much of that. So I think you all absolutely embody and show, yeah, this is popular because we're giving people what they want. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
So I want to take a moment and think on the writing process when you know you're kind of meeting readers where they're at. How do each of you all engage with the public? How do you all kind of let that involve in your writing or avoid it in your writing? Like what does the space do to dictate is the wrong word because I don't feel like any of you are dictated to by your audience. I'm sure there's many a DM that would disagree with me, but there's a level of I know what they want and I know how I can make my own voice match that. How do you engage?
I do think sometimes readers, and I say this as a reader, don't always know what we want until the author provides it for us. And so sometimes I think, like, I definitely was very aware as I was like, because I've been doing, Jennifer and I started around the same time, like forever ago. And like, as a reader, a young reader, like looking at certain series that maybe the author had taken a little too much fandom or reader feedback in and tried to please everyone, which ends up not pleasing anyone. And I kind of internalized that of like, I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I'm always right on the choices that I make, but like, I have a really good editing team who has no problem calling me on my nonsense when I'm like, no, this is fine. And they're like, that, you didn't set that up right. But when it comes to readers, like, they often demand, like, I'm excited for like this couple or this plot or this whatever, like give it to me now. And I'm like, you think you want that, but you actually need time. It needs to simmer, it needs to like come about in a way that it'll feel more earned. Otherwise, if I give it to you now, you're gonna be deeply disappointed. And so I tend to write, like, I have a lot of engagement with my readers, less in recent years, but like overall. But I definitely don't, like, it's lovely that they get excited, but at the same time, I'm like, I have a core, like, what I'm working on, and, like, I have to write for myself first, otherwise, I wouldn't do it at all.
Yeah, and I also feel like when you're writing, you also just have to really trust the process, both as a writer and a reader. And like, even if like, say that like, because I just finished the second book of my series, and I know that the ending is really sad, but like you have to trust the process and like you just have to like trust that it's a series, like trust that the author knows like where the story's gonna go. And like also as you're writing, like sometimes you try certain things and like it just doesn't work and it's just not where the story needs to go and you know where the story is going to end. So I feel like it's like a lot of just trusting yourself and trusting the process and knowing your characters really well.
Yeah, and I wanna say, like, I know, as like Katie, I'm not sure about you, Olivia, but, like, when you write I know Katie and I have written in multiple genres, and I feel like I can say 100% there are no type of reader like a fantasy reader. Like, that is a different ballpark, in a good way, in a great way. But, like, I feel like sometimes they know more about the books than I do, and I wrote them. To get like and I feel like that is, like, the only group of readers, and I feel like that's fantasy readers across the board and not just with books, but games, TV shows. Like, they get so heavily invested, and that to me is always, like it stuns me because, it's like I can get invested in somebody else's creation, but when it's yours, it's hard to wrap your head around. I think like what they said, it's at the end of the day, you have to write what you want to write because if you're writing to make one person happy or one group of readers happy, you're going to anger the other group. and then you're just going to exhaust yourself trying to please everyone. So you ultimately do have to write what you want. I have a reader group that I'm mostly in, and sometimes, like, they have, like they'll come up with, sayings and slang and code words. So something that I do, in terms I know you said dictate, but you didn't mean that, but it made me think of this, is if I see the readers, repeatedly mentioning something, I will try to work, and sometimes it's just a word, and work it in just to, as kind of a shout out of, yes, I'm paying attention, like, to what you guys are saying. But yeah, I know. And I think the thing, I don't know about you guys, but I know sometimes when you have something that's going to happen in a series, right, that is going to split that readership right down the middle, there always will be some side that thinks that you did it to please the other side, and it can be really hard, I think, sometimes navigating that because you're doing it really to kind of please yourself. Like, and what.
Right. Well, and like this comes down to like I think that a measure of success, which is really hard to deal with as the author, but it is a measure of success, is like writing a polarizing book where people are like, I love this, or like, I absolutely hate this, and this author is actually garbage. And like, it sucks to get the negative aspect of that, but it's better than just being like, it was
Yeah.
okay. Like everybody
Make
just
me
being like,
feel
it was sort of
comforting.
fine. And so, like, but it's hard to where that I feel like that line is often in those really hard choices where you're like, I know this is going to be polarizing, like Jennifer said. Like, I know this is going to be something that people are going to be either very excited or very upset about. And it's what makes books memorable.
Yeah, and I also feel like my favorite scenes to write are the ones that I sit there and I'm like, someone is going to either fucking hate this or absolutely love it, and there's no in between. Because like you pour so much of yourself into those scenes, and it's just like some people are just really not gonna vibe with it, and that's okay.
Yes.
It is such the energy of trust the process because even when you hate what happens, you're gonna go to the next book. You're going to book 3 to figure out, okay, why did they do this? Why did you kill my favorite character? Or why did you make them a whatever? Like I think there is accessibility just still really sticks to me because this welcomes everyone into the space and it makes you feel heard. Jennifer, I love the idea of like, oh, well, my reader community says this and I did manage to slip it in. Or if like the shout out is there, but then also like how all of you manage to stay true to yourself, I think is what keeps people coming back. Like they're reading for you, whether or not they know it. They love the story you're creating. They love the world you're building. They love the characters. And they might disagree, but they're going to have a great experience because you brought them there. So then, what are some of the must-have elements for each of you while you're writing? I mean, I know we have no good definition of what romantasy is. I read like 6 different articles and everyone came up with a different answer. But what is a have to have for you, and what are some of the things you like to sprinkle in?
For me, again, I approach it with what do I like to read, and it's me is I am a sucker for like enemies to lovers, because or anything that creates a banter, like where you're gonna have this back and forth, like because I want to watch or read, like, and I say watch because I'm gonna so date myself, but like I grew up watching X Files and Mulder and Scully. Th They kissed once. I don't even think it was on the TV show, but I'm watching it because it's such a bizarre show, but at some point, I'm now invested in this relationship. Like, and you remember that GIF or that meme where, the guy was trying to push the 2 heads together to
Yeah.
kiss? That
Kiss.
yeah, kiss. That is what I like, and so that's something for me, and I think that's something fantasy romance just freaking excels at. Like, whether or not it's, like, things within the character that is keeping them apart or it's external influences. And also, one thing when I write contemporary, sometimes it can be hard coming up with, like, logical, like, realistic reasons because, you never just want like, if you had one fucking conversation, the whole book would be over.
Yeah.
Like, You don't with fantasy, you just have all these things that can happen. But for me, it's the banter, it's the chemistry that I have to have.
And I also feel like that kind of goes back to the accessibility of Romantasy because when you have these characters that have such good banter, because I also love banter, or like a
Mhm.
really funny friend group, or like just really good chemistry, it makes you kind of feel more for the character and like more of a connection to the character or the relationship developing. And like you can see yourself in their shoes and it sounds like someone that you could talk to. And like I feel like that's like a must have for me because like we spend so much time looking at our drafts that like I want to be able to giggle and kick my feet while I read this. Like I have to stare at this all the time.
And I think it also makes like it makes them real, like you said,
Yeah.
even though they're in this completely unreal world. So it's like you still can see like you like I would know this person like outside of this world. And I think, yeah, like that's hugely important.
Well, and it's interesting that you say enemies to lovers because I've been sitting here thinking like of the romantasy books that like are like you think of the ones that are like these are the romantasy books that like people are um like seeking. Are they're all enemies to lovers, aren't they?
Some variation of that, like where it's
Yeah.
some level of forbidden or I want you, but I can't have you. Like, yeah,
Yeah, then
it's
you have to have that tension, yeah, because it like most of the series are like at least a couple books, and you have to like have something to keep them apart, even if you're gonna switch love interest halfway through, like some people do, which I find very interesting because it's yeah, it's such a I have like romanticy is like my special interest right now. Like I don't necessarily write like the specific what folks are looking for, or what readers are looking for when they say romanticy is a very specific thing. And I think publishing is still kind of turning, trying to figure that out. But it's like first person POV. It's a really strong, like feminine character, usually. The love interest, like there's banter, there's like, some variation of like, we can't be together when the spice happens, it tends to be pretty spicy. And it's just, which is, yeah, and like the accessible world building, like there's just all these elements that come together that create like just a propulse. And the pacing is very much faster than you see in a lot of the more traditional fantasy books because it's like you have strong characters and we're running, we're sprinting. And that I think is what helps, like, if there's unputdownable.
Yeah, that feels like what's helped the genre explode is that you want to get through the next book and the next book and the next book. Now, looking behind the curtain for all of you, how how close are you to being done with the next book as the first one's going into print? Like what does some of your timeline look like? Because I think of like the duologies that come out a year after the other or the romantasy series where it's like, well, Jennifer, I feel like you always have a book coming out. Like, how do you all, Katie, you also always have a book coming
I feel
out.
like Katie and I both have slowed down though.
That
We
well, that
Yeah.
is true,
yeah.
and no shade because we all
No.
want it. So,
No.
but where are you at in the timeline to be able to be like, okay, well, book one came out 2025, book two is coming out 2026.
Well, my dumbass needs to learn to stop saying to readers how many books are gonna be in a series.
Yep.
I need to stop that. If
Yeah,
you ever hear me say that, just I give you permission just to because I plot, but I don't plot like I do like overall like arc of a book and whatever in the series. So I may think it's only going to be X amount of books. Then I'm writing what I think is the final book. And I'm like, there is no way I can get all of this done and feel right. And because I'm gonna have to rush stuff. So the book that's coming out in August was supposed to be the last book in the main part of the Blood and Ash series. But as I wrote it, I was like, there's no way for me to tie up all these loose ends that seemed little until you went in and started to address them. And then you have these, of course, you have these other plots happening that it's like everything has to get screen time. And so I just started writing what was now is the last book for that main part of the series. So I'm at the very beginning of it. Um, and yeah, it's just I need to stop saying to people it's going to be X amount of books. I always do that, and
yeah. Only let that be determined by the book
yeah,
deal.
yeah.
Right. I'm usually 2 books ahead, which is crazy. Well, for traditional, indie, not so much. Like, let's not pretend. But in
Yeah.
traditional, I'm usually 2 books ahead. So like when book one's coming out, I just turned in book three. And it's actually been kind of like, because I was indie primarily for a couple years, and it's really nice to have that distance because when people are like, "Oh, I hope this happens," and I'm like, "I'm 2 books ahead, bud." Like I don't have to worry about that pressure because it's gone, it's done, we're done. So it's very interesting, especially now coming to the end of my Dark Olympus series. The last book will be out in like just next spring, and so people are like, "Oh my god, blah blah blah! I hope this happens in book 10." I'm like, "It's written, it's been written." Like I hope you like it. So
It's
it's kind of
been in the
nice,
can, ready to
right?
go. Like, I haven't thought about that book for 2 years.
Yeah, it's definitely like the pressure's still on, but it allows a little bit of distance that I finding I really like because I strive to people please, and that's not always the best thing as an author. Like even just in the like, I hope you're happy. Like somebody was talking about the second to last book is like one of my most anticipated couples because each one of my books is a different couple. And someone's like, "Oh, I hope X happens." I'm like, "It doesn't happen. You're gonna be so upset with me. I'm so sorry." Like, so it's definitely a like double-sided sword a little bit sometimes.
I really wish I was ahead on that. I finished book 2, like, that comes out in July, and I am so deep in the trenches of book 3 right now, but, like, I'm at, like, the very bottom, like, staring up, like, I have to do this all over again. And, like, I just have to figure out all the way to, like, connect all the threads, and, like, Jennifer was talking about, like, I was like, "I thought this was gonna be 4 books. I told everybody this is gonna be 4 books. I have no idea if this is gonna be 4 books now because we may need another book after this." So, I'm just going with the flow and writing as I can.
Um,
But oh, sorry.
I just want to say, I just said the book comes out in August. It does not come out in August. Comes out September. September.
I was going to say, I'm looking at my notes. I'm like, okay, well, I could have
Uh,
missed something, but that's okay. September.
yeah.
That,
When you're at the beginning of writing a new book, your brain does not function normally. Like
No.
it's
When
I
publishing timelines are so silly because you're like, "What do you mean I just turned in a book a month ago that's out at the end of 2026? Like that's not real. That's not a real year. What do you mean?" Like so
that is
yeah.
the hardest thing with traditional publishing is like, yeah, like Katie said, it's great because you do have this distance, but I've already written X amount of books between that book when it comes out, and now I have to promote a book that I'm like, "Shit, I don't even remember half this stuff." Like, I got like, and I'm like, "I gotta get cliff notes on this," because my head now is already in a totally different world, and that is something if I could ever get, like it's like with trad publishers, like, "We need to fix this. We need
That
to fix
honestly,
your process because it takes too long."
they're like, "How do you feel about X character?" I'm like, "Did I write that character? Like I
Yeah,
don't
I'm like,
remember them.
you're like,
"How
Who's
do you"
what book
Ethan?"
am I
Like,
on?
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, or it's like when someone asks you for a quote of, like, a book that you published, like, a year ago, and you're just like, yeah, I don't know." You're like,
Ask me a quote on the book I was writing today. I what are words? Do they exist? I don't. Did I write ever? No. Like
And like, let me see if I still have a manuscript that I can control F in. Just, uh-oh, what
So
was this about?
does Goodreads still does, like, people's favorite quotes? Because I usually will have, like, somebody I know, like, I'm like, "Oh, look at Goodreads and pull quotes," because
I think
I'm
Amazon
like
does too
yeah,
because they're
that
connected
yeah,
now.
because
Yeah.
they
yeah.
when you highlight, like, most highlighted passages or something, yeah. That pro tip.
Sometimes they're weird though. You're like, "Why'd you highlight that one, guy?"
Well, it's because when
Like,
you're reading on an app, you, like, drag your finger wrong. Like,
oh,
I highlighted the dumbest things in books accidentally, and I don't know how to unhighlight it. So,
fair. Okay.
people I read or I'm probably responsible for the
Yeah, because
I
I'll be
sat
reading through and I'm
down.
like, "Why are we highlighting this passage?" That makes so much sense now. Someone did it and everyone's like, "Well, this seems important. I'm gonna highlight it as well." So
They were reading so fast, flipping through. They're like, oh, okay, I'll get that one too. I do love hearing, though, that you're all at different points with your relationship to your work. I think no matter what, everyone's going to relate to. Like, I don't know what I had for breakfast today, let alone anything I ever wrote or recorded. When I record the outro for this, it was like, here's a summary of what we talked about. Couldn't tell you, I made it up. Or like, I'll have to like scrub through this footage to figure it out. Maybe I'll mention this part in the outro. I'll make a note. But but no matter what, you could be 3 books ahead, or you could just be, like, in the trenches with your readers, and I think that all makes for a different experience. Like, you know who you're turning to for each experience. I think, Olivia, your writing is different than Jennifer's, is different than Katie's, like, but you're all working in the same space, and I think that's because of each of your approaches and voices and experiences, and I love how that contributes. But knowing that some of you are 12 books ahead and some of you are, "Uh-oh, I gotta get to book 3 and book 4 right now." What is your process like when you're at book 1? When you have to build the world, when you have to create the characters? What comes first for each of you, and how do you go about developing as you go through?
Pinterest boards and Spotify. Those are probably, like, what I go to first, honestly, because I feel like once I have yeah, because I feel like once I have the vibes for the characters and I can kind of see them in my head, then I'm like, "Okay, now let's get to the world, like, where are they? Like, what are they doing? What's their relationship dynamic?" So, yeah, I feel like the first thing that I always do is I make mood boards, I make playlists, and I just, like, try to figure out the vibes, and then I just kind of put that to words.
Like, vibe check, build
Yeah.
some characters, build the general tension idea, and then the world comes last almost, or, like,
Yeah,
where do
because,
these people I've created fit?
yeah, because I'm a very, like, visual person, so, like, I'll go on Pinterest and, like, I'll look for, like, fantasy settings and, character images and things like that, and, like, it just really helps me, like, see the story, and then once I see the story, I can write the story.
Love that.
I actually just am starting a new series which hasn't been announced yet, so it's like secret, whatever, but it's a fantasy. And I was determined to go in this time different because usually I'm like, vibes, we'll figure it out as we go. And unfortunately, that has bit me in the behind so many times over the years that it's like, how does this fit in, Katie? I don't know. I forgot I wrote it. So this time I was determined to like, because I always do the Spotify thing as well. I always have like visual character inspirations. One thing I did this time that I found so incredibly informative and helpful is I commissioned an artist to create like some pieces that also had like the fashion because the fashion's a big component of this world, and like seeing that was so cool that I was like, oh, I got this, I'm in it to win it. And I have a very extensive airtable base that is frightening in its complexity, and so that also helped a bunch, like with because timelines, I'm bad with timelines. I make it
Have a
spend
what?
a day.
What
Airtable.
what is that?
Oh, it's okay, so it's kind of like Excel
I'm
on
thinking of an
steroids.
air hockey table, so
No, no,
I
no,
am
no.
so far off on this.
No, it's really cool because it's kinda like Excel, but, like, prettier and more accessible if you are not an Excel person, which I am not. And you can, like, link, um, records to each other, so I had a timeline of, like, this is day 1 morning, and here's the characters who showed up, and here's the location they were at, and here's,
Oh my god.
who died or whatever. And so and you can sort it. It's really cool. I
And it's called Airtable.
Yes, Airtable.
Okay.
It's used by a lot of, like, corporate people, but, like, I use it for book stuff. And, yeah, so, like, I have and so I but that was kinda cool because I could export it as a CSV and, like, give it to my editor, like, "Here's a book series Bible?"
Yeah.
I
That's
feel
what
like
it
I'm very
sounds
on
like.
top of things. Yeah.
I'm gonna
That
write that down. I need an
yeah, that's
Airtable.
why I'm always
Yeah.
looking new ways to like, because I think for me, it's like when you work from home, you're writing, you hardly leave home.
Yep.
And so like not only do I have to have like different places where I write to kind of change it up, it's like how I write. I want to be able to change up. But I love starting the first book in a series. I am nowhere near as prepared in terms of, like, Spotify lists or mood boards. Fantasy, I do let percolate for an absurdly long time. The Blood and Ash series, I think it was, like, 4 years of it sitting in the background of my head, because when you are writing fantasy, it's like you're not like, with every other genre, you don't realize how much you rely on people understanding the world, or the world just making sense. And when you have to build that world, it's like I just have to sit with it for a while. But there's such a freedom to starting that first book because you feel like you haven't screwed yourself yet.
Yes, yes.
You haven't written yourself into 500 corners.
You're not having to research Roman like sewers and how that worked because like that's a thing that if I don't research it, they're gonna inevitably end up in the sewers and then I have to figure out how that works. Like
Yeah, or just like you spoke about clothing, just trying to find different ways because like even like when you Google something, it's like everything is a tunic, but it's not really a tunic or like what people today think a tunic is. Like for example, it's just like when I think of a tunic, I think of a sleeveless or sometimes longer, but a long thing. But in reality, that can also mean like the like double-breasted crossover, like a stork coat like, yeah, and so it's just the amount of time I have wasted on looking up ways to describe effing clothing, is astronomical, and I still have to do it. Like,
or just like, does the printing press exist? Like, would that make sense with the supply lines? And then I'm like, I've spent 2 hours doing research on this for one line in this book, and but if I don't have it, then like the system breaks down of like the coherency, and once that breaks down, you lose the readers sometimes.
or even like if a certain way you say something, will that make sense in this world? Yeah.
Yeah, I've spent so much time researching, like, can this plant grow in this climate? And I'm just like, I'm so tired, please.
Or naming. I just it's city one, city two, city
Oh
three, and
god,
then I have to
dang.
go input them all again. I waited till the very end and I was like, oh, now I have to name everything. This is terrible. Whose idea was this?
Because you're writing fantasy, you can't have a character named Bob. Like, you
Unless
could.
it's Star Wars.
Yeah, right? I will say Star Wars is probably one of the ones that will have, like, these extremely bizarre names and then Stan.
Luke.
You got
Yeah.
Luke, right? And you're like
Well, and you
but yeah.
also have to look up to like make sure you're not accidentally naming something that you're like, oh, here's a some letters, and then it's like, oh, that's a slur or something like crazy that you're like, wait,
And
no,
you created a name of a city, but it is an actual city that existed, like, at one time, or it's a city that spelled a little bit differently, but you realize, "Oh, that's a city in this other popular series." It's
yeah,
na
yes,
naming stuff to me is that is the most stress inducing because not only does everything have to feel right, it has to fit the world, and for me
Mhm.
personally, I can only add IA at the end of a city so many times
yeah.
to
Put
make
an
it
X in
like
there, like
right.
it's fine.
Yeah, and then
Oh
the worst
God.
is when also a city that you just named sounds exactly like a character, and you have to change one because you can't have people get too confused between a city and a character.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
So thinking of that, because right, the joke, like there's 8,000 TikToks of people making fun of like trying to pronounce any of these names. But how has the like proliferation of the genre made it so difficult, or how has it changed the way you go about coming up with characters, character names, like city names, all of that? Because right, you have to suddenly you are like for anyone who didn't think that the detail is there. The detail is there. Can I grow a tropical plant in this kind of climate? The research has been done. Like, what are how has this broken you? Because even trying to ask the question has broken me.
You know, I've like I've gotten to the point where, like, I will do, like, a check, like, especially with character names. Like, city, it's, like, usually they're not always spelled exactly, and, of course, here's the thing, at the end of the day, no matter what genre you're writing on, someone is gonna say you took something from somebody else or somebody took something from you. That is always going to happen. If it hasn't, it will. Prepare yourself for it. But cities, they normally aren't spelled, I think, similar. Um, Character names, I look, right? If I just don't know it. But secondary character names, I don't worry about it so much. I'll try to spell it differently if I'm aware of like I can just I'm gonna just use Cassian from A Court of Thorn and Roses series. Like I keep for some reason wanting to write that name in and I keep stopping and because I'm like, "Oh, I can't 'cause that's Cassian," but then I'm like, "Wait a minute, can I just spell that with a K?" It's so but I feel like I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there does come a point where you have to almost let it go a little bit because
Yeah.
nobody owns a name. It's a
Yeah.
name. It's existed.
Well,
Yeah,
and the other
and there's
thing
so many
too. Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
Sorry. No, go
No,
go.
it's okay. Okay, okay. I was gonna say, I feel like there's also so many books in the romantasy genre now, and there's only like so many names. You're kind of like put into a box almost, and it's like, okay, there's only so many names that we could pick from. Like, there's gonna be overlap in some way. It's bound to happen.
Yeah, I always picked names on vibes, and then I've seen, over the years, a number of conversations on like this name means this, and that's what that author meant. And you're like, no, I didn't even look that up, and now I look it up because I'm afraid. Because I'm like, no, like you don't want to accidentally like back into something, and then readers like, are the curtains were blue because blah blah blah, and you're like, no, it's just a name that I thought sounded good. Like I don't know, and but yeah, the copying thing, I mean, you just kind of have to make your peace with it. Like a lot of us are pulling from the same
Well,
pieces of media that we're in conversation with because like a lot of these authors are like in a relatively similar age or like generation or whatever. And it's like we all watched The Labyrinth, we all were really
Yeah.
into, XYZ, we all have these same influences. So of course we're going to see some similarities in the books themselves. And also like that again, that's a perk, not a bug, because readers while they do get defensive and like territorial and stuff, like realistically, the average reader is like, I'm just excited to read. I really like this and I want more kind of like this, but a little bit different. And so, like, being able to pick up multiple books in the genre and still find the same things that you really like in them in different stories is a good thing, not copying.
I don't. What is that saying? Or I don't even know if it's saying. Somebody said this a long time ago that there's only 7 stories to tell in the world. That's it. There's just 7 stories. But the reason why there seems like there's so many is because it's how you tell the story. And like you said, we're all inspired. We all had to be inspired by something, a piece of media we consumed, and and I think that, like Katie said, it is a perk because it's telling you in a way like what people want. Like, people, and also for readers, it's a perk because they want. It's like if you like this, you'll like that type of. And it's just that it's how you tell the one of those 7 plots basically.
And I get like so many of my recommendations through like, if you like this book, then you'll like this book because I'll be looking for the things that I like. So it's not like it's always going to happen. Like you're always going to get compared. So I feel like you should just take it in stride because it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's nice to hear though that like it doesn't add necessarily a layer to your process. You're not stressed about, oh no, we're running out of names. Oh no, I'm getting compared to. It's like we're all contributing here and we're all excited about it. And Katie, thank you. I feel so validated in just hearing like there was nothing important about those blue curtains. I just wanted them to be blue. Like,
I just like the color blue. I don't know.
yes. Having sat through a lit major, there are many a times I went, I would love to ask this person why they said this because it's not as deep as this professor is claiming. So love that. I love that. And to kind of lead into this, the elephant in the room, book talk and bookstagram. What is your relationship like with these spaces? The impact of fan culture? How do you feel in your space? Is there any toxicity you deal with or that you feel, or is it a lot of the I'm just glad this book exists? What's the overall?
I just want to say something because like I feel like book bloggers ran so book talk could exist.
Absolutely.
And the environment is different because book talk is so much bigger. So bloggers back in the day, I keep saying back in the day, but with blogging, it was very niche. Like it was a very small community that was very powerful. And I sit here today because of book bloggers because I, like Katie, started off back when self-publishing was not looked at well, neither was small publishers. And if you did not have a tradition, and I started off in YA, which was 500 times worse in how you were like, you can't sit with us unless you're published in hardcover by this one imprint at this one big publisher. And, that was kind of the environment. And I always feel like I got lucky that book bloggers somehow ended up with my book besides all that and got behind it. And as the years changed and you see the readership or viewership moving from that to Bookstagram and then to Book Talk. And I feel like I got so lucky again when it was just as a perfect storm for me because it was 2020, March of 2020. And when I say I got lucky, I don't mean that in a way that, oh, yay, me. It was a terrible time. I feel like people also were looking for escape. And that is when Book Talk existed before then, but that's when it
Just
exploded. Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of people had more time on their hands. And From Blood and Ash it came out, like, I think beginning or the end of March. And I like again, I owe everything to book bloggers, and I feel like I owe a lot to Book Talk. I feel like that is their space. That is not my space. And I do not I don't want somebody coming in my sandbox and making it uncomfortable. I don't wanna go in theirs. I would love to be on TikTok, but for an app that is so popular, it has the worst accessibility I have ever seen in an app. I have very bad vision. I cannot see things, and you cannot increase your fonts. You cannot do any of that, and I don't understand how an app does not have dynamic, what do they call it? Dynamic font or something or typing. So I just it's too much of a pain for me. I have to screenshot my like, just to see what I'm never really over there. But I feel like that's their space, and I feel like the reason why Book Talk was so successful, and I'm gonna get really opinionated for a second that some people might not like. The reason why I think Book Talk is so powerful is because it started off without authors being involved. And I see things are starting to happen in Book Talk where it's ending up in major network news coverage. And you're going to find an author's involvement in that somewhere.
Yep.
And I feel like if once Book Talk, if Book Talk loses its thing, it's going to be because authors got too involved. I feel because it changed because everything becomes then about you. I feel like people have to worry about authors watching their videos, like things become less organic. It's like you have like your big brother watching over them, like, and I feel like the reason why it was so and is still so powerful is because it's just completely organic. And and I will
Well,
say
and like once the publishers started getting involved too, of being like, oh, Book Talk makes money, let's get in there. And then that started like muddying things.
Being a requirement for your promotion cycle, you
Yes.
lose that unfiltered nature.
I've been around, for a hot minute and like I enjoyed success early in my career and then like was straight midlist for years. And Book Talk is what like launched me like real in it was like spring of 2021. So it was like we were still all stuck at home. Everybody was reading. I find it very interesting because it's like similar to like when 50 Shades was hitting in like the early
Yeah,
2010s.
you hit the dark romance boom in
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah, and so that it's like but it's like a lot of new readers coming back to books for the first
Yes.
time, and like that was really exciting, and it got a lot of flack because like the old school folks were like, we already had this conversations, we'd already done this thing, and it's like, okay, but like let's make space for the new people. I was super active initially, which I was like, oh, I can take this to like interact kind of as a reader and like recommend books and stuff. But then like when Neon Gods came out, the dynamic changed and I tried to stick around for a while, but like it just it it, it the algorithm was too good. And so I'd be like, oh, here's my book, Neon Gods. And then it'd be like,
here's a
here's
post about your book.
right. And or like here's somebody being like, I actually really hated this book, and here's a 10-part series on why this book sucks, which they are allowed to do, but like I don't they didn't tag me, but the TikTok's like, do you like this? You should watch more of this. And I'm like, no, this is a hostile environment. This is not for me. Like I have no business being here. I would like to get off this ride. So I'm on TikTok now, but it's mostly like I try to stay away from like the book side of things. I don't post a bunch. I watch a lot of like horses and like cooking and like things that have nothing to do like I don't go here, so when there's drama in like the horse community, I can just enjoy the drama without feeling like I have to say something or like partake in it. And inevitably when there's drama in Book Talk, like 9 times out of 10, like Jennifer said, it's an author who's doing some tomfoolery, and it's like, buddy, and then doubling and tripling down.
Yeah, it is. I don't want to say it's like the good old days of authors responding to Goodreads reviews level of luxury that we haven't luckily see as much now. But but authors will be somehow mixed in with this, like,
Yeah.
and that I
When
feel
there's
like
like a
amplifies it.
there's also a pressure to like before I stopped making so many videos, like when something would happen, people are like, "What's your take on this?" And I'm like, "I don't have an opinion on this because I have not done nearly enough research to have an opinion that would be like nuance or like what I would personally feel. I'm not going to be reactionary." And then there's the pressure of like if you don't have an opinion, then you're on the wrong side, and you're like, "Whoa, like calm
Uh-huh.
down, buddy."
Asking
So
your
Yeah.
favorite drag queen how they feel about
Yeah,
XYZ because you put yourself online.
yeah,
yeah,
Right. Like, why not turn to the expert on the topic to give you
right.
opinions on the topic?
one
Yeah,
like I
like
do think. Oh,
nope,
oh.
you go. It's okay.
I do think we have a responsibility if you have a platform to speak to some degree, but also like not on every topic and not
Speak
every
where
time it comes up. Yeah, because then
exactly
you're
where
just
your
drama
voice
chasing.
is exactly where your voice is like warranted and where your expertise leans in. Like Jennifer talking about the importance of accessibility in apps. Like, yes, let's have Jennifer's conversation and take on that within like on the app in the community. Like, but right, we all don't need to hop in and be like, I'm going to make a video about this because it's trending.
Well, and I think sometimes there is a fine line you do walk between silence is listening and silence is complicity. Like, I think there's a
Yes.
fine line, and I think, and also there's a fine line with me is because, especially in this world today, I also want to give people a place that they can go and forget about what's going on at the same time. And so I try to be very mindful of that when I am speaking out. And it's not because, you know, I'm worried about, readers. I feel like if you don't know where I stand on things by now, like reading my book, I don't know what to like, you just ain't gonna pick it up anyways. Like,
Right.
you ain't gonna get it. But, like, I do feel like that's something that and with not just book talk, but any social media where it's hard. It's hard to know where, you should that managing those, what you need to do and offer to people.
Yeah, and I feel like my relationship with, like, social media or anything like that honestly depends on the day that you ask me because it depends, like, did I get tagged in a negative review that day? Like, did something pop up on my For You page? Like, you just never know, and, like, I think there's, like, this learning curve with so many authors that I talk to where, like, we just pulled back so much over time where we're just like, "You know what? Like, this is a reader space. I don't need to be in this space, and I'm just gonna let them have it," because, like, I do the same thing with Katie where I just go and watch videos of like, cooking or gardening or dog videos. Like I just don't really interact with book content anymore. Like I'll post if I have to and then I just dip and I just don't really get like too involved anymore because like I'm so grateful to Book Talk and like all the book bloggers that have posted my book and like make really amazing videos and reviews and all of that. But like I also don't wanna see what's in the comments, you know? Like, it's just I'm glad that it exists, and I'm so thankful, but, like, at the same time, like, I don't need to be there.
Oh, definitely. I think the idea here is like this is an important platform and it's an amazing space for everyone. I think to Katie's point of no, no, let everyone say their piece. It doesn't matter that we were talking about this 10 years ago. Like the thing I love about the word book lounge is that it's cozy. There's a specific vibe that comes to mind. And it doesn't matter if your goal is to read 2 books this year or to read 100 books this year. Everyone's welcome here. Like I think that's the space we need to cultivate for audiences, for readers, for listeners, for whatever it may be. And I think like, yeah, we all have a way to get involved with the things we love, but everyone gets that chance.
And I like, it's something to add to that too. It's actually something Katie said about, like, you see people's expectations. So and that's something I just wanna stress for a second, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. And we're not just talking about negative feedback. Sometimes positive feedback can get in your head.
Yep.
And so what I try to do is not let stuff get in my head because when I first started writing, the only voice I had was mine slash the character. And now it's like you have your agent, your editors, your beta readers, your critique partners, and then the readers. I would love to be able to sometimes go back to when I didn't know any better. But like, you know what I mean? I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I didn't have all these other voices in my head. And but again, it's not always negative stuff. Sometimes it's positive stuff because I do think that like you said, like where people, people like certain aspects about the writing, but you're writing a book that you know is not going to have that in there, or you start believing your own hype. And the
Oh
moment that
God, yeah.
you're a suck, it's going to suck at that point. Like it's because you don't. My whole thing is I always say it's like to myself, I haven't written my best book yet because I have to keep working towards something. Like and so like even positive stuff I feel like can really just kind of mess you up a little bit. And so I just want to say it's not just like negative feedback, things like that. It can be just people loving your stuff can
Yeah, too
kind of
many voices, too much feedback, too much like it can be pressure either way, even if like people aren't intending it that way. Or just like I in writing this fantasy had a lot of internalized tomfoolery about my ability to world build just because it's like, oh, like no, that's not what Katee Robert does. And it's like, well, it turns out I can do that, in fact, if I just like get out of my own way. So
and also like I remember like back when, book Twitter was like, I feel like when back then, it's like I remember being so tuned into like, it just and when I finally was like, "I'm done with being on Twitter," like, it was, like, really mental health, like, I just because you do realize and I mean, this is also what I went to school for, I went to college for, like, I should have known that what was starting to affect me is that there are things that are important to people that may not be important to you. There's things that are important to you, whatever. But like constantly seeing people's opinions about everything, it can start getting in your head where, you realize that you've wasted 3 hours reading about and sometimes it is just drama where it
Hmm.
like this thing right now where people are like, oh my God, I use M dashes. I don't use AI. Who the fuck cares? Okay. Like if someone really believes that, okay, like, what? That doesn't matter. And to me, I'm like, there are more important things happening right now in this world.
right.
People thinking that if you use an M dash, you write AI, like you use AI, whatever. And that honestly, I don't even know what situations back whenever that I finally realized, like, I don't care about this. Like, if people want to think something like that, go ahead. Like, have go at it. Like, it because,
Right.
like, yeah, it's just, because my mind, I'm focused on what I'm writing and I'm focused on things that I think are important, and they normally have nothing to do with books. And so at the end of the day, and I just feel like you do have to find that what matters to you. And that's just not for authors. That's everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We all need that advice.
Yeah, and I also feel like I write some of my best work when I'm not constantly, like, staring at brain rot on my screen, like, I need to, like, look up from the screen and, like, live my life and then come back to my draft, like, I need to not be, like, so, like, obsessively scrolling on these apps about things that just, like, don't matter, like, like, this is not your life, you know?
Well, especially
Right.
because so many of the algorithms, and this is not new, like reward rage, like or like rage-inducing content, and so it gets people riled up, and the adrenaline's going, and then you're like you're not. I'm not going to sit down and write words when I'm all like jittery because I'm like, oh, I'm so angry because of this thing I saw because the algorithm provided it for me because it knew it would make me angry, which would keep me scrolling because that's what they want, and it's just it's hard to regulate that sometimes. I like the apps that I lock myself out of the internet because I have no self control. And I'll click over, and then an hour later, I'll still be scrolling a social media site. And so it actually like shames me low key. I use rescue time. It pops up and it's like, you're in a writing sprint. What are you doing? Basically, it's like, you have 28 minutes left. You literally just started. Please go back to work. Like,
And I
okay, I'm
don't think you
sorry.
realize how much time you do. And you said brain rot, and brain rot is a real actual thing. I mean, it's something that when I was in psychology, they didn't call it that, but it's something that has, always been there, but has exploded with obviously the rise of social media. And it's something that no one even knows what the long term effects of mindless scrolling does. They do believe it's very similar to like what early onset set dementia does. Like, oh, it's bad. Like, it is actually so bad. And that's why when you look at other countries, sometimes they do actually really do regulate certain things a little bit, especially for younger people because they are like, look, we recognize there's a problem and we can't, allow this because obviously it's human nature. Like you can't give any of us sometimes. You give us free will, we need it. But watch us also run ourselves into the ground. And so
Yep.
but it's brain rot thing is just something I've just been fascinating learning about recently, where it's like, oh my God, this is actually something very, very
I feel like
concerning.
we're gonna see that exasperated in
Gen
going
Alpha is
forward.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
very
Yeah,
important.
with like the just like the AI and stuff, and like how people are just kind of opting out of critical thinking. Not everybody, obviously, but like a large section of people are just like, I'll just have this machine do this thing for me. I'm not going to think about anything at all. And I'm like, buddy, no, buddy,
We
no,
gotta we gotta think a little bit,
just a little bit.
just as a treat, even.
But
Yeah.
I do think we already are seeing that sometimes when, like, in the real world, it's people's inability to kind of use common sense. Like,
Hmm.
does this sound real? But sometimes in the reading world, I see it happen a lot where people are almost so busy reading between the lines, they're missing what's actually on the page.
Almost
Um,
in verse sometimes too, where they're like, oh, this character did not explicitly state this, and therefore they believe this thing. And you're like, no, every piece of evidence of their actions does not support that. Why do they have to explicitly say the thing in order for it to
mhm.
like count? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's something interesting I see a lot now. I see a lot in fantasy where it's a
Hmm.
lot of like sleuthing. And sometimes you're like, oh yeah, they're sleuthing. And other times you're like, You're gonna be disappointed."
Right. Oh, it's not
Like it's
that
not
deep.
that
Yeah.
deep. I'm not Taylor Swift. I did not leave a
Right?
trail of Easter eggs for you to guess what's
There's
gonna
no
happen.
time codes. There's
No.
there's no, like,
Yeah,
secret
I
code
wish
to
I could do
crack.
that.
I can't
Right.
even fathom. All salute to her, but like, no, that's not how my brain works.
Well, what's happening to the genre in the next few years? To to wrap us up on that, what is the future of Romantasy?
Katie, you sound like you have thoughts about that.
I
Yeah.
do.
I'm curious.
We're reaching a point where I've already started to see it, which is really interesting to people being like, oh, all romanticy is the same. But also at the same time that this is happening, there's a push, or hopefully, I'm seeing more and more books come out by like authors with marginalized identities or backgrounds. And like they're bringing these fresh new voices to this subgenre that like it's not that it's not fresh, but like I think we're gonna see it expand and like blow wide open while being hopefully still with somewhat within the confines of like what readers want. But I do think reader expectation will evolve over time, and that's something that we can't necessarily anticipate. I do think we're gonna see more cozy romantasy though, especially because like the cozy fantasy is like really hot right now because people don't they just want to enjoy the thing without the big stakes. But I
So what is
don't think that
cozy fantasy? Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
like
It's like Spell
Travis,
Shop
yeah,
Travis Baldree, the
yes.
Bookshops and Bone Dust. It's
Oh,
that, like, very fantasy element, but there is no big bad, there is no grand stake, like, they have a quest, but they can kinda do it whenever, like, it's truly just, like,
Like the
comfort.
stakes,
It's like a
yeah, this,
cozy mystery doesn't
yeah.
have the big brutal murder, it's very like Jessica Fletcher and Cabot Cove, like
and
that.
it's not just like what we used to call urban fantasy back.
No, no, no,
No,
no.
it's
It's
still
Mm-mm.
the full.
it's
Yeah.
usually second world, so like fantasy, but it's like in a bar or like their little thing or like it's just, it's a lot. It's like the fantasy without like you feel a little safer, I guess, as a reader that you're like, oh no, it's cool. Like I don't have to worry about my favorite character dying because
Plot is
I'm
it
reading.
involving the entirety of the kingdom of 500.
Yes, yes. Yeah, much more confined stories. And so I think we'll see that overlapping with Romantasy, as well, and I'm very curious on how that's gonna go. I'm excited. Like, I love this stuff.
I think that's incredible. Olivia, any thought? You look like you have a thought brewing
No,
there.
I just really agree with everything that Katie was saying. Like, I think that they made really great points, and I just I would love to see the genre expand as well. I would love to see more voices being published, and I think that that can only enrich the genre and to add more variety to I know I also see, like, a lot of people saying that it's a very overly saturated genre, like, there's so many books in it and all of that, but, like, there's so many books in every genre. I just feel like Romantasy gets a lot of hate. So, I would just love to see more voices being published within it to really, like, blow it up to, like, its full magnitude and, like, I also feel like once it's blown up to its full magnitude, it's not gonna get as much hate, at least in
Uh,
my opinion.
nah,
Yeah.
so
You
I
Oh,
agree
okay.
and disagree. I look, I because they say this about every genre that's popular. There's too many
Okay.
Yeah.
saturated. They did this with paranormal, or they do it with, and we all do it. With like a certain type vampires, right? At one time, billionaires at one time. Guess what?
Billionaires are dead. Vampires are
Yeah,
dead.
but people are
Rom-coms are
still
dead.
reading
Yeah.
vampires and billionaires and rock stars. I feel like that is a sign that you've arrived as a genre. The moment they say they're all like, well, of course they are. It's a genre.
Right. Like, this is a specific reader
Just
expectations.
like all
People are
thrillers
providing that.
have this plot. It's like,
Yeah.
but it's romance is attached to it. It will never not get you. It will never
Absolutely
No.
not.
valid.
It will
Especially
never
with
not.
hardcore fantasy sci-fi readers are
Oh,
very aggressive about, like, anything that's, like, too many emotions.
Oh.
"Oh, there's sex in this? Like, we don't know about that." Like, oh,
The
not all.
misogyny, like
Yeah,
there's there's so much baked
yeah,
in.
I mean, you look at the romance genre as a whole.
yeah.
The fact that this is what kept publishers' doors open, and it still got absolutely no respect, even at publishers
Yeah, like,
that it
you
kept
look
their
at
building. Yeah.
sorry, I'm so
Um,
sorry. But yeah, like, you look at some of the publishers and you're like, I'm watching one particular publisher, which used to be, like, the name in romance, and they're just, like, fully systematically, like, leaving out all
this
their big
man,
names.
so one of them, I've been muttering it, I'll say it afterwards, built their entire multiple imprints on
Yep.
romance. And
Mhm.
the moment that uh, there was a shift, and it wasn't that people stopped reading romance. What happened was the rise of the indie author who could price ebooks respectfully
Yeah.
and could get books out in a timely manner. They just said, you know what, we can't compete with this. So they let go of their entirety of their mid list. And the mid list is what pays their bills.
Yep.
We now see the consequences of that at these publishers. And it's like that saying, cutting the nose off at your face, despite your face. And it, to me, that was just an utter lack of respect for the genre. It was almost, I mean, I still can't even wrap my head around who made these choices. Like,
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting, like, they cut staff, and they, like, cut all the people who, like, really root for and, like, created and, like yeah, I could get into it, we won't. But, like,
yeah,
I just
that's a
think
whole
that,
different hall.
unfortunately, when even romance publishers don't always support romance because the minute that it's, like, becomes a little harder to sell, they're like, "Ah, maybe we just won't do it. Like, maybe we'll just stop and, like, focus on this other thing instead." And it's I there's just especially as we're kinda going into, like, a bit of a sex panic as a society, like, I think that these conversations I think romance is going to be continue to be, like I mean, it's never not gonna be a hot topic on, like, "Is this okay?" Meh. So,
But I think it's going to get very, unfortunately, I think we're gonna see more of that happening. Um, Books being banned for reasons that make absolutely no sense. And that's just not with romance, but like,
Across the board.
yeah, across the board. And a lot of times they will use, like, I had like one of my books, somebody literally called the cops on my book in a high school library. It was YA. There's not even sex in the book. And it's a book that's actually about the same eye disease. Like, it's of all of my books you could have done this on. Like, let me list you. It's the Moms for Liberty.
Uh,
of
Or
course, of course. They
mm,
of
call
course. But at the
that's
end of the day, it wasn't really my book. That my book was the front. It was a book that featured a gay romance that they were taking up to the state attorney that no one was paying attention to. And it was, so I think you unfortunately are probably gonna see a lot more of that where they're using these more like questionable, like what, like books that make you go, what? Because they're actually doing something behind the scenes, and that is not getting the airtime. And so I think it's gonna be a struggle, and it's gonna be harder. But I feel like even if all that stuff wasn't going in, romance has just always been like treated as Cinderella, like book,
right.
Yeah,
Even though every year it is one of the top 2 to 3 circulating genres in libraries, it will always get just absolutely dumped on.
Yeah,
But
my
this is
bad,
where I have
y'all. I was too optimistic.
No, but it's good to be
no.
optimistic. It is good.
No,
I'll
Like,
yeah,
hope for
no.
the future. I don't think it's gonna work out, but I'll keep
Olivia,
hoping.
when was your first book published?
What'd you say?
When was your first book published?
I first published Indie in 2022, and then it got republished in 2023.
Yeah, we're just also embittered.
yeah. Yeah, it's you talk to a romance reader who's been around for like more than 5 years, and it's like Texas, chip the size of Texas in my shoulder. Every February, like clockwork, it's like bodice rippers, Fabio, brr, 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 brr.
Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
know.
pull books that haven't been read
That's
in
a
10 years.
prerequisite at New York
Yep.
Times at least twice a year. They have
Yep.
to publish an article that clearly no one has looked at a romance book since 1983. It's just a requirement. I look forward to them now. I'm like,
Oh,
what?
yeah. Like
Like
at that point, you're like, okay, I see you're recycling content. Great, good, good. You're very clever. Good job, you did it. Like, okay. Yeah.
But Olivia and Katie, to both of your points, I think all that this shows is that the genre is going to keep exploding and expanding. And I
Libby.
hope that we move from subgenre to just pure genre. And that's where like subgenres build up underneath it. And that's where that like, Olivia, your hope of like less hate will come in. Or like once you hit that established point, yeah, there's always going to be haters. There are some things that I'll die hating on, but like but we all do that. So there's hope there. And since because of the three of you, I have to shamelessly plug an episode that will be airing before this. If you want to hear a conversation on book bans, go check out episode 7, where I talk to Kaylin Bayron, Amanda Jones, Pat Scales, and Skip Dye about book bans and the state of reading online right now. I have to get used to promoting the show within the show, but since it came up naturally, and I know I will be saying hello to many of you who have only come here for this episode. Try more. I promise you'll like it. But before I let you all go, thank you for truly just like a beautiful conversation where I was like, I could take this in any direction. And y'all said, oh, don't worry. We've already punched your ticket. The train's leaving the station. This is brilliant. Before we go, what projects are you working on? What would you like to promote? Where can the people find you online?
Well, I can promote my second book of my series, Wrath of the Dragons. That's coming out July 29th. I'm currently working on book 3, not settled on the title yet. Will get there eventually. And all of my social media handles are just at It's Liv Darling. So that's that.
And Jennifer, we'll go to you next.
Primal, A Blood and Bone comes out in September. That is I don't even know what book that is in that series. But it's the next to last for Poppy, her story. I'm working on the final book in that, and I'm not online a lot right now. I don't. Yeah, I'm just not. I am, but I'm not online paying attention to books. Like I just, you know. So, but you can go into my reader group. It's JLA NDERS is Jlanders. So I'm in there a lot, but also I'm opening up a bookstore. Great time to do that. And it's a romance only bookstore. Double great time to do that.
Oh my God, I'm so
And
excited.
yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
so we're targeted for. We haven't announced this yet, but we're looking. I think July 26th will be the opening. But we will be sharing a obviously more detailed thing. But yeah, so I've also been kind of busy with that. So that's something I'm working on.
What an exciting thing to sneak in there.
I will be visiting.
Yeah.
Well,
I think we all
like I'm
will.
going to be reaching out because we were able to work out because the old Opry House is across the street from us, so we're able to use that for like events and stuff. So
Oh, that's cool.
And then Katie, what about you?
The next, like, God, the next probably book coming out is probably Tender Cruelty coming out in December. It's Zeus and Hera. I will make you ship Zeus and Hera. Just buckle up. It's book 9 in the Dark Olympus series. One of the most anticipated ones. I'm excited for people to read it and not at all terrified. And then I'm just turned in the fantasy that is unnamed. At some point, I'll be able to announce it. It's tarot based and maybe some like death trial stuff and really great clothes.
I'm screaming from the rooftops. Well, thank you all for joining me today for this conversation. I'm so grateful you could all be here to share. And now let's take a quick break before we head into book racks. Well, hey, y'all. This is the part of the show where we take a little break before our next segment. This is a great time if you need to pause, step away, take care of something else, or if you need a little break before you move on to our book racks. This is the place for you to do that. In the meantime, I wanted to sneak in a little Libby tip for you. Especially today, since we were talking about Romantasy, I thought it would be a great time to show y'all how to return books early and the fun little celebration you can have for yourself when you do that. Since Romantasy is such a popular genre, I know there are many a wait list in your library on so many of these titles, but also these are books that I know we are tearing through. You are reading them in just a handful of sittings, if not one sitting. And so why not, when you're done, instead of waiting for Libby to return it automatically on its due date, you return it a little early so the next person in line can grab it a little sooner. So I'm going to hop into Libby and show you how you can return a title early. All right, y'all, we are now in Libby and we are on my shelf. So navigation bar at the bottom, you have the library building. That's where you can go and browse your library's digital collection, looking for your next great read. It's like walking around the physical library. You can see different curated lists and recommended titles. That magnifying glass will be where you search for something specific. You've got the title, author, series name of a magazine. The center is your menu. You can find all sorts of great things here, like how you can connect to our tech support team 24/7 via email or find help articles and short video tips. On this side, we've got the little tag. This is where all of your tag lists live. But then that stack of books will take us to our shelf. This is all of your loans and holds. You can see your timeline. You can see any notices. So you can see I am all done with Murder in the Dressing Room. If you want to check out the interview with that I did with Holly Stars, check out that. It was so much fun. Brilliant book. Just a fun drag, cozy murder mystery. But when you are done with a book early, I finish this super fast. I can turn it back in right away. I'm going to come into where it says Manage Loan. And then I am just going to go with Return Early. So we can see this right here. We can confirm right here. I'm going to return my loan and then it's back. Now, just wait there. You deserve a celebration for returning that book early. This isn't just any normal bouquet of flowers in a spotlight. If you tap on that, you are going to get a super fun explosion of flower emojis. I know it's just a little thing, but to me, there's something so fun about watching those explode. So do that, click, check it out, have fun. Hopefully you enjoyed that helpful tip and trick. If you already knew and are already returning titles early, hey, good on you. Thank you. I know the person waiting for that book thanks you as well. But yeah, just go in, return those titles early. Now that we're done with that tip and trick, let's head over to our next segment where Meara and me give you some romantasy recommendations to rock your TBR. Welcome to our second segment here where you can have some incredible book recommendations to delight and devour your TBR. These are our romantasy recs, and I am joined by the incredible Meara at Meara is Reading. Thank you for being here today.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I love to talk romantasy.
I am so excited you're here because I had a discovery this morning that maybe I'm not a newbie to the genre.
Oh.
I am very new to it in the general sense. Romance has never been like my big sweeping and like I struggle with fantasy, but I like a lot of elements of both. And so
Yeah.
I've been starting to play around in romantasy. But then when I was like, okay, again, I feel like I'm always researching in all of these episodes to see what's what. And
Yeah.
a book on a Goodreads list for cozy romantasy, because that's what I wanted to focus on if I pulled any titles for today,
Yeah.
because I love the cozy vibe. I think that's what brings me into it.
Okay.
Number one on this Goodreads list for cozy romantasy was Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of my all-time favorite books, one of my all-time favorite just everythings. I have a Calcifer
Yeah.
tattoo, like, yes. And then also from the movie, I've got the Witch of the Waste curse on Howl and the markings to move the castle. But that's a
It
different
really
story.
is your favorite.
It really is my favorite. But so I was like, oh my God, that is cozy romantasy. So
Yeah.
I'm discovering that there are some loves for me, and just like all of the other genres I've dove into, it was just about like finding the right combo, the right words, the right whatever
Yep.
for me to hit it. So, ha ha ha, longtime listeners of me and this show, I got to sneak in Howl's Moving Castle again, and you can't do anything about it. Someone reset the counter. How long has it been since Joe brought it up? That said, Meara, what's your relationship like with Romantasy?
I love it. Okay, and so here's the thing. Romantasy as a genre is like made up. Like
Totally.
it is kind of a newer word, a newer trend. So many things fall into romantasy. Just kind of like how so many things fall into like speculative fiction and you're just like, what is that? Like it can encase a lot. So I mean like if you're talking fantasy just has to have like can be like magical realism, low fantasy, high fantasy. One time someone reached out to me and asked to interview me because I have the highest like amount of like not monster romance, but like fantasy creature, fantasy person romance books that I post about. They're like, you post about this the most of anyone that I could find. And I was like, that's great. And it's like witches, vampires, ghosts, like all those kinds of things.
It's not a Minotaur milking farm or whatever.
I have
but
read that. That was crazy. That
I want to read it. It's like, shout out to Shane on Smosh for bringing it up after he read it. I'm like, oh, I want to know. I need to know.
right over a bookstore book club.
Love that.
They really push us to try everything. It
But
was
like,
really good
get
until
Guinness on the phone if you are the one out here for the most like paranormal, like broad sweeping paranormal romance list.
yeah. So like that's romantasy. And then romantasy is also your ACOTAR, Belladonna by Adeline Grace from Blood and Ash. You can see I have like the special
Yes.
editions of all of those books I just named right here on my shelf.
Now
like,
I'm looking and I go, oh yeah, now in frame today is the romantasy section.
I actually have a tattoo of a dagger. And it's for a variety of characters. Arya, Poppy from Blood and Ash, all the girls, because every female main character always has a dagger on her.
Always.
And so I always have my dagger on me.
Romantasy single-handedly brought back all forms of like the dagger belt, like the secret hidden dagger, and I'm so here for it. Thank you for this though, because we talked about it in the first half with Katee, Jennifer, and Olivia. The like, well, it is kind of made up and it does have a wide array, but where we kind of got to, or where we ended with that conversation, was that like this is almost the birth of a new genre, because romantasy is technically a subgenre, or but this feels like a birth of a new genre where we are finding those subgenres underneath them, that there is a contemporary version of romantasy. There is the like very at what we would call paranormal romance can now be moved into a romantasy category. Like that's so fun. And I hope it also helps more people get into the genre, to be like, we don't have to rally against it because it's popular or love it because it's popular. Like, it's just something to, not to bring it back to Howl's Moving Castle, but it's just something that we can find our own way to fall into with the things we enjoy. And there are so many authors and so many incredible books. Like,
yeah. And because of the fantasy element, they can be so different.
Yes.
Like, I love when someone invents their own magic system.
Oh my God, me too.
But then you get the brooding love interest and you're like, let's let those enemies become lovers. Like,
right. And the other thing is like, there's so many different depths of what is the romance. There's so like, you've got your spice scale, but you've also just got your like, is this almost like a platonic romance? Is this, like, all the way to they did what on the page, so you've got it all. And I think that's really fun. I also love the emergence of cozy romantasy, as I alluded to. Like, the ones I picked either fall in the cozy vein or, like, I could give a cozy romantasy list till I'm blue in the face, because I feel like for me, my fantasy struggles are like, I don't sit through too much world building. I don't sit through too much explanation.
Okay.
And while romantasy already helps me taper that a little bit, taking it to the next level of like cozy
Mhm.
really just
Yeah.
really just lowers it all around. I don't want a lot of world building. I don't want a lot of development as far as like, here is the depth of the magic system. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I
The thing
love a good magic system explanation, but I gotta get into it. And usually the high fantasy, I can't even get to the part where they introduce the magic system, so I can never
Yeah.
get into it.
I'm the opposite. I love world building.
I know I'm the outlier here.
Listen, I attribute it to the fact that when I played The Sims, like it was my job, and because I'm a D&D player. And I think that
Got
those
it.
things are both very strongly world building activities. And so I like diving into someone else's version of world building.
Uh-huh.
My biggest struggle with Romantasy is the wars. I
So that
hate the wars.
yes. I'm like, how many worlds can there be, number one, and how many of them need to be in like a full-on coup d'etat, struggle for power, army against army, knockdown, drag out war, which I guess could also go to the critique of fantasy, but I think like in Romantasy, it's for me specifically, it's like so often stuck in court intrigue. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
which
I love the
always leads to,
politics of it.
yeah,
It's whenever they're like, and now it's book 3, so we have to do the big battle where someone you love will die.
where everyone you've ever enjoyed will either be mortally wounded or will join the other side, and you don't know who to root for now.
Yeah, truly, they love a switching sides.
But, you know, now I'm just thinking about you saying D&D and how this all plays into you. And then when my friends finally convinced me to play Baldur's Gate, I was like, what do you mean I have to talk to everyone? They were like, how are you already at the tavern? I can't think of what it's called, the Moonlight whatever inn. You've been playing for a day. And I go, well, yeah, they told me I need to take care of this tadpole in my head. So off I went to complete the story mode. And they're like, you need to meet people and talk to them. And I go, what? But that's also my gameplay. I'm a like, finish the story mode first and then go and do the
Yeah.
world exploring. So,
I never like a game
oops.
where I like have. I was really, oh my God, what was it called? RuneScape?
Yes, sure
I was
was.
really into that. And like, all I wanted to do was make some bread, and then someone would show up and kill me.
Right. You're just trying
And
to resource farm and
I was just trying to be a cozy gamer. And the teenage boys on there were not nice about it to
saying
12-year-old me.
terrible things in chat and then murdering you.
All right, we have to talk about some books.
Oh my God, you're right. Okay, you
We
start
have-
recommending. Give us our first
Okay.
one. Hope y'all are wanting a chat today.
Shout out to the editor. I don't remember his name. Jonathan?
Shout out, Andrew.
Andrew.
You are the real MVP in all of these episodes.
Truly. Okay. So the first book I'm recommending. This book is not one that I saw anywhere, even though it's got over nearly 58,000 reviews on Goodreads. It was the last day of the year. I needed to hit my 100 books read. And I was asking my friend, I was like, do you have any ideas or something that I can just like get my one last book in? And she's like, listen, this is like a full romantasy. It's almost 500 pages. And she's like, but it's really good. And I read it in one day. In like 24 hours, I read this book. It was so good. I am on my hands and knees begging for the sequel because of where it leaves off. This book is Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. Also Louisiana author, shout out. But this is about a girl named Bryn who has lived her life in this like floating community because her people have been banished from the continent. And she has joined the military, and the book opens with her and her military class getting to go to the continent for one day to go to the market, because that's kind of like one of the ways that they keep peace is they like expose the kids to this one day a year, like one class gets to see, and then they go home. She is an orphan. They found her, but her close-knit group of friends is basically like the prince of their group and another like high-ranking official's child. And so they go out onto the continent and they're at the market and like shit gets real immediately. Things blow up. Someone's trying to kidnap her. We immediately meet this handsome man that she's like seeing from across the stalls, and then he's trying to kidnap. Like he's the one that's trying to be a problem.
When isn't a man trying to be a problem in
So true.
public?
That's a good point. But she goes home, goes back to their floating island, and that guy shows up there and he's like, I have to talk to Bryn, and I will only talk to Bryn. And he knows things about her past that she doesn't know because of the fact that she's an orphan, and it does a lot. It goes crazy. I've not read a single Romantasy book like it, and it has the best plot twist I have ever read.
Okay. Well, if that doesn't set you up, go devour it. Especially love the hadn't heard of it. There's a lot of reviews, but the same thing. I was looking at your list and I was like, oh, I also have not heard of this. And knife on the cover.
A knife on the cover.
Knife
It
on the cover.
has a 4.2 on Storygraph and a 4.28 on Goodreads.
Not bad for Romantasy, especially. And
Yeah.
like not like hasn't blown up anywhere as far as we can tell in our conjecture right here, of course. Like, apologies if there are people who are mentioning it. This was my first hearing of it.
But it's like not a book that you're going to walk into Barnes & Noble and see on a front display.
Right.
It should be, though. It is so good.
Well, I'm gonna sneak one in right here. A completely different pick in that kind of cozy romantasy genre. This is Cosmic Love at the Multiverse Hair Salon by Anne Meara. This is a recent release. For those of you listening to this now, it'll have been out for for quite a few weeks, a little over a month. But this came out June 3rd. A multiverse novel about two women who fall in love despite living in worlds that are 5 months apart, as they try to find a timeline that doesn't end in disaster in this debut novel by Anne Meara. Katee Robert has never been shy, which is how she's made a name for herself as an in-demand hairstylist and social media star. So she can admit that spending her days at her hair salon and her nights with her tight-knit group of friends and one grumpy cat is not the kind of exciting life she hoped for. When a misdirected text from a stranger leads to a flirty exchange, she surprises herself by suggesting an impulsive meetup. But the woman, Meryl, never shows. Katee brushes it off until Meryl's sister and friend show up at the salon, demanding to know what's going on. Because, you see, there's no way Meryl could have texted her. Meryl has been missing for a month. Katee and her tight-knit group of friends soon discover they aren't dealing with a catfish, but a temporal paradox. As they come to terms with the idea of parallel universes, they realize how many times their paths have crossed like this before. But even as they understand the multiverse more and more, nothing keeps Meryl from vanishing. As it draws closer to the moment of Meryl's disappearance, there's only one question left. Have they done enough to change the outcome, or have they done so much that none of them will make it past that fateful day in September?
Wow.
It's got a gorgeous cover. It's that like, okay, I'm calling this romantasy. It could fall in so many different things. It's got what feels like it would have been classified sci-fi, but to me, it's so like the sweeping storytelling and like the romance elements make it feel more fantasy, make it feel more romantasy to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just and gay. So
And gay. What else do you need?
exactly.
Okay. My next book, hang on, there it is. I have a physical copy and it's beautiful, and so I have to show it. This is Lore of the Wilds. And
Oh, that's stunning.
yeah, the shimmer on there. It's by Annalee Sabrana. And this is like, honestly, like the best way I could describe it is a typical like fae girl love triangle with magic elements. And like sometimes that is all that you need. You can see that it's pretty tiny, so it's not got a lot of world building. You get kind of like right into it, and it is pretty cozy in that, okay, she's not in a good situation. It starts with Lore, that's her name. And she lives in this village that is like surrounded by a forest that you can't get through. So she's like trapped in this prison. But a fae lord comes to her village and is like, we need a human to come organize our enchanted library, like look for something in it. Fae can't get in there, but a human can probably do it. And so she gets taken and goes because she's trying to find magic for herself. She does not trust the Fae. The Fae are bad, but she's like, this is my opportunity to like get magic, set things right, help my people. And there's these two handsome fae boys that are each interesting her for different reasons. But one of them is a good guy and one of them is a bad guy, and we don't know which is which.
Love it. That
Yeah.
sounds perfect. And then when you turned it sideways, I was like, oh, I'll be
Yeah.
having that.
It's a
that will
very
be read.
approachable book. Yeah. If I could read you the little blurb on the back, like just like the little phrase, it's an abandoned library with a deadly enchantment, a fae lord who will do anything to get in, and a brave human woman, a collector of stories willing to risk it all for a taste of knowledge and power.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And it's a good vibe. Like, it's just very like dark foresty. Like, if you love to put on those YouTube videos where it's like ambiance, rainy library.
Yes.
This
It's
is
that.
for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do you have for us?
Oh my God. I think we're also going to go with another book that takes place in a library. Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is actually a book that I picked up on Libby. I needed an audiobook for a drive, and I just was like, what is available right now? And I was feeling young adult, and I think I just like I think I might have put recently added. And it was the first thing that appeared, and I was like, great, I'll listen to that. And I got home and I sat in the driveway and I was like, eye twitching, stare, like just like I can't get out of the car. I have to finish this book. And I think I actually drove to the bookstore and bought a physical copy because I was like, I need to keep reading this book. So this is about Elizabeth, who does not trust sorcerers. Sorcerers are evil in this world. Magic is bad. But she was a foundling. And so she grew up raised in a library. And these libraries have magical grimoires. And they like have personalities and relationships with the people in them. And she wants to become a warden of the library. So she gets to like keep charge of the books in the library. She's very passionate about these. But then the most dangerous grimoire gets loose and she is accused of the crime. And so now she has to be partnered with her sworn enemy, a sorcerer, Nathaniel, and his servant, who is just like, I love a demon side character. Like, whatever the like, they're just like snarky, kind of like Salem from Sabrina. Like, I love that energy in a side character, and his servant is absolutely that. And so it's them having to get the grimoire, find out who did this, protect the libraries, and maybe they fall in love along the way.
Oh, I love that. I will always take like a sassy demon side character.
Literally always.
Always. Salem, of course, perfect. What about one fire demon, Calcifer? No, I promise I'll stop mentioning Hell's Moving Castle today.
No, it's fine.
It's just
The
right
first time I saw it,
there.
I was like, am I Calcifer? And my friend is like, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. So I'm just gonna shout out real quick the Captive Prince trilogy. If you have not heard of this, this is an old one. The series started in 2014. It's like I said, it's a trilogy. So book 3 came out in 2016. You can now pick up the whole thing and just devour it. It's by C.S. Pacat, and this came out, like I said, 2014. It is the first novel in her critically acclaimed Captive Prince trilogy. This is Captive Prince. Damon is a warrior hero to his people and the rightful heir to the throne of Achelos. But when his half-brother seizes power, Damon is captured, stripped of his identity, and sent to serve the prince of an enemy nation as a pleasure slave. Beautiful, manipulative, and deadly, his new master, Prince Laurent, epitomizes the worst of the court at Vere. But in the lethal political web of the Veretian court, nothing is as it seems. And when Damon finds himself caught up in a play for the throne, he must work together with Laurent to save and survive in this country. So, for Damon, there is just one rule: never, ever reveal his true identity. Because the one man Damon needs is the one man who has more reason to hate him than anyone else.
I'm like a little scandalized.
I know, right? I did something with my voice there.
When you're like, as a pleasure slave. I was like, excuse me?
Uh-huh.
What?
So, gay court intrigue.
Gay court intrigue.
And I mean, a trilogy that you can pick up all of the elements in Libby right now. You can get through book 1 through 3. Why not?
I think a trilogy is the best form of series.
I agree with that. I think it forces your hand as an author to like figure out how you're going to wrap it up in a specific set of time.
Yeah.
But it's also like just enough that you can pump a little bit more into it if you need to. There is,
Yeah.
I like duology is such a wild word to me already, but also like I love how quick a duology is.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need like half a book more. And that's where I
Yes.
think like a trilogy could really balance it out. Like, you know.
Narratives are told in 3 parts. Like a story
Right.
arc is 3 parts. And so a trilogy just makes most sense because you get like a book for each phase of the arc.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I have my last book.
Okay.
Oh, wait. No, this is not my last book.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
Okay. This is my last book that I fully read and recommend with my whole chest.
Love that.
This is Bring Me Your Midnight by Rachel Griffin. I love all of Rachel Griffin's books. She writes pretty cozy, low fantasy witch romances, which is everything that I want in my life. But Bring Me Your Midnight is definitely the the most romance of her books. It's a forbidden romance, and I love a forbidden romance. So this is about Tana, who is a witch. She is going to be the head witch of her coven. They live on this island off the coast of somewhere very Pacific Northwesty. It is a magical island that it is made up. That's full fantasy. But her position in life is to marry the human governor's son to build a bridge between the humans and the witches, and then lead her coven when she grows up. But there's this lore on this island that when this specific flower appears, it's very deadly to witches and has almost wiped out their coven in the past. And one day she's out swimming in the sea because she really loves swimming and being in the water. And she sees this flower and she's like, this is an omen. Bad things are coming. But as she's realizing that maybe everything she knew about this flower isn't true, she also meets someone from this dark secret coven on the island. These witches who didn't want to be humanized and wanted to really stick with their roots. And she meets this boy who's her age and one of the descendants of that group. And he starts helping her realize really what is true and what are the lies that her family and community has told her. And all of this is also wrapped up in her passion for the water, because it turns out that there's this climate crisis edge where the way that the witches are doing their magic to be more palatable to the humans is impacting the nature of the island. And so it's her falling in love with this boy, getting caught, and having to go through the whole tear them apart. Can they ever get back together? Part of a forbidden romance. So there is no immediate happily ever after, which I love. I love the drama. And then also her it is a little bit kind of like that court intrigue, but amongst her own people, and then doing what she can to save the thing that she loves the most. And does she save the thing she loves the most, save the people she loves the most, or save the boy that she's falling in love with?
Oh, I love the sound of this. I also love that strong female lead plus climate conversation in a fantasy world,
Yeah.
the real world implications brought into this fake world. It's just
Okay.
so
Sorry, I just threw
tasty.
something else in here. If that is something that you like, I actually do have to recommend Rachel Griffin's first novel, Season of the Witch, which is about a girl who is at a witch school, and every witch is born with an affinity for a season based on the season they're born in. But there is one witch who is born with affinity for all the seasons, and that is our main character. And they are literally having to fight the climate crisis because witches have always helped nature through the seasons, but the climate crisis is impacting their powers and their ability to do those things. And so it is very directly linked, and it's so good.
And when we needed him most, he disappeared. I will also say very respectfully, I love this cover because it kind of gives me like the late 2000s, early 2010s in the design.
It's
To
a
have, like,
very vintage cover.
to have like a person on it, and then
Yeah.
like I don't know, there's something about it that's giving like 2008 to 2010, and I say that fully respectfully because I like, this is a great cover. I love it.
Yeah. I will. So her books actually these are the first editions of her first two books.
Gorgeous.
The cover itself is printed. And then for Bring Me Your Midnight, this is what it looks like under the dust jacket.
Oh, that's stunning.
And the quote on it is, "He comes alive in darkness, so darkness I become."
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Auto buy author for me.
I mean, honestly, it's important to have our auto buys. Like,
Yeah.
what can
Okay.
you do? Okay, your final, which is not, I know, a full recommend. It's like
I'm just
you're
reading it right
almost
now.
done with it. Yes.
Yes, I'm reading this book right now, and we're recording this during Pride Month, and this is a great book for this. It's Devils Like Us by L.T. Thompson. It has three main characters. Cass, who, this is not a spoiler, about 20% into the book, realizes that they're transmasc. So beginning of the book, Cass is a well-to-do woman from a Victorian family that's looking to marry her off and have her carry on the family name because they have a lot of money and no sons. And she hates everything about womanhood and the societal expectations. And then, but she gets random visions of people getting murdered. And so she had a best friend named Remy. Remy's family also has status, but does not have money, especially because her father went missing many years ago after he was researching into the secret society. And Remy and Cass were best friends until Cass had a vision of Remy's dad dying and told Remy, and Remy shut Cass out. And our third character is Finn. Finn was Remy's maid when her family could afford it, but now she's just Remy's best friend. And Finn is a big old lesbian and has the fattest crush on Remy. And she tries to talk to Remy about liking girls. And Remy's like, who doesn't want to kiss girls? And Finn's like, that's not straight. And so everyone's got a little bit of queerness going on. And then Cass's best friend Henry, who everyone expects Cass to marry, goes missing after he accidentally joins Cass in one of these visions. And so the three of them realize that Henry is at this secret society that Remy's dad was researching and that Remy has committed her life to. So the three of them set sail. They dress up as boys, at which point Cass is like, I'm cutting off my hair. This is it. And everyone just looks at him and they're like, Cass has always been a boy. And it's just like the most beautiful, like, gender transition moment in a book I've ever seen. Like, literally, like, in the same sentence, everyone goes from she to he, and they're just like, that makes sense. That tracks. And then they go off on their adventure to try to get Henry. And that's where I'm at right now in the book.
I love it. Ooh, okay. Well, hopefully you enjoy the end.
Yeah. But, I couldn't just put, like, all straight romantices in here. I had
Correct.
to spice it up a little bit.
Well, I kept you on your toes. You didn't know that I was going to be contributing until this morning.
That's true.
Until I said, you know what? I refuse to not recommend some gay romantasy today.
I did open the doc, and I was like, oh, Joe's bringing some books to the table.
Oh, look what he's doing here. Well, Meara, thank you for joining me today. It's been wonderful to chat with you as always. Thank you for yapping away with me.
Oh my God, literally so much talking. I love this topic. If y'all want more romantasy books, come find me.
Yes, go check out Meara's page, of course, as always, linked in the show notes, but go get you some good romantasy recs over there. And now let's transition to the outro. Well, friends, thank you for joining me today for this romantasy episode of Book Lounge by Libby. How amazing are Jennifer, Katee, and Olivia? Like, come on. They shared with us about the rise of romantasy, their hopes for its future. And if you head over to LibbyLife.com, you can see my exclusive segment that you can only find on Libby Life with them, where we do some spicy and sweet romantasy lightning questions. And of course, if you didn't have enough books on your TBR already, Meara and I gave you even more books to fawn over. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If this was your first episode of Book Lounge, welcome. Consider looking back and seeing what else we've talked about this season. And, make sure you're following and subscribe to the show. You won't want to miss next week for the final episode of season 1, where I chat with some amazing authors to get you all set, ready, and excited for Hispanic Heritage Month. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Book Lounge by Libby on your favorite podcast app and check out the Libby app YouTube channel for our video content. You can also follow us on Instagram at libby.app. You can send an email to bookloungebyLibby@overdrive.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes. If you're loving the show, a quick rating or review helps other book lovers find us. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.